This conference will now be recorded.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
వినిపిస్తుందమ్మా.
Okay. Sorry for the technical error. So should I start from the start? So if I need to start from the start, please say something in the chat at least. Am I audible again?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So coming to today's topic, that is hernias. First we'll discuss about the anatomy and relations of hernia. So coming to the definition, so whenever an examiner or a professor asks you in your exam or in a viva, you should always define a hernia as by the book, that is from the Das. So what is the definition is, it is a protrusion of viscus or part of the viscus. Viscus is the bowel through an abdominal opening in the wall of its containing cavity. So that is a definition and you should always know it by heart. So the etiology of hernias are the main pathophysiology is increase in the intra-abdominal pressure leads to hernia. So there are different entities which causes in increased IAP. So those are coughing, straining, etc. So coughing is again due to any upper respiratory tract infections or pulmonary deficits, etc. In the straining, the most common cause of increased IAP in a elderly aged male is benign prostatic hyperplasia. So if a patient of about 50 years of age complains of a hernia, comes to your OPD with a swelling in the groin, what you should always elicit is, you should always do a PR and know the prostatic status. You should never operate on a hernia patient without checking the prostate, that is in the males specifically. So other important etiological factors are obesity, congenital remnants of process vaginalis, intraabdominal malignancies, and peritoneal dialysis. The most common and the most important etiology is always increased IAP. Coming to the composition, so there are hernia consists of three parts, that are the sac, the coverings of the sac, and contents of the sac. The sac is the outermost covering of the hernia, in which the part of the viscus or any structure which is present inside the sac is present. So the sac again has mouth, body, neck, and fundus. So depending on the part which is inside the hernia, they are again differentiated into different types of hernias. For example, if the content of the sac is omentum, it is called as an omentocele. If the content of the sac is an bowel, it is called as an enterocele. So depending on the content of the sac, they are again differentiated into different types of hernias. So here it is given the contents of the sac. If it is an omentum, it is an omentocele. Similarly, there are hernias where the content can be an appendix, which is called as an Ameyans hernia, which we have discussed in the last class while discussing about appendix. So if the content of the sac is an appendix, it is called as an Ameyans hernia. Similarly, rectus hernia, which is a part of the circumference of the bowel, is present inside the hernial sac. Not the entire bowel, the wall of one part of the bowel is present inside the hernial sac. That is called as rectus hernia. So based on the site, again they are differentiated into various types of hernias. So inguinal and femoral hernias comes into the groin hernias. Umbilical, paraumbilical, epigastric, obturator, and incisional hernias comes under the ventral hernias. Of the lot, inguinal hernias is the most common one in the groin hernias, while in ventral hernias, incisional hernia is the most common one. Incisional hernia is not a naturally occurring hernia. It is due to the heterogenic surgical interventions, which leads to weakened anterior abdominal wall, which can lead to hernia. The most common incisions that develop into incisional hernias are the laparotomy incisions and hysterectomy incisions. So after the site of the hernia, then comes the classified. They are again classified into reducible hernias, irreducible hernias, obstructed hernias, incarcerated hernias, and strangulated hernias. Of these, obstructed, incarcerated, and strangulated always need immediate surgical intervention. So in reducible hernias, you can always postpone the case for better whenever the patient is fit better. But in obstructed, incarcerated, and strangulated hernia, you should always operate on the patient on an emergency basis. So this is a diagram which depicts the inguinal canal. So this is the deep ring, and this is the superficial ring. This is the peritoneal sac. So coming to the contents of the inguinal canal, spermatic cord is the most is the common structure in males. Sorry, the mic is getting disturbed in the middle. So in the spermatic cord, the structures which are inside the spermatic cord are the genital branch of genitofemoral nerve, ilioinguinal nerve, so what else, vas deferens, pampiniform plexus of vein, and there are for remembrance purpose there are 3 fascias, 3 arteries, 3 veins, and 3 nerves. So remember it as a rule of 3. So the 3 fascias are external spermatic fascia, cremastic fascia, internal spermatic fascia. The arteries are testicular artery, cremastic artery, and differential artery. Differential artery is the artery that supplies to the vas deferens. The veins are pampiniform plexus of vein, which is the important one here. And the testicular and again the differential. And the 3 nerves that are sympathetic nerves, ilioinguinal nerves, and genital branch of genitofemoral nerves. These are the components of the spermatic cord. So this is the diagram which is depicting the Froger's myopectineal orifice. So it is an important landmark while dissecting, while doing the operative surgery. So it constitutes about so the borders of the Froger's myopectineal orifice is, so above there is the arching fibers of the internal oblique and the transverse abdominis muscles. This is the internal oblique muscle. So above you have internal oblique muscles. Medially we have the rectus abdominis muscle. So the diagram is not clear, but so medially we have the rectus abdominis muscle and rectus sheath. Inferiorly we have the Cooper's ligament, and laterally the iliopsoas muscle. So that are the borders of the myopectineal orifice. Write it down if you need. Above by the arching fibers of the internal oblique and transverse abdominis muscles. Medially by the rectus abdominis muscle and rectus sheath. Inferiorly by the Cooper's ligament, and laterally by the iliopsoas muscle. So here it is even, sorry. So coming to triangle of them, there are in the hernia surgery, everything is about the anatomy and different triangles. So one of that is the triangle of doom. So where you should be very careful while operating, because injury, the contents of the triangle of doom are the iliac artery and iliac vein. So this is very important while doing laparoscopic surgery. Than in the open surgery, the chances of injuring iliac artery and iliac vein are more in the laparoscopic surgery. So while doing it, this is always important to remember the borders. So it is laterally by the gonadal vessels, medially by the ductus deferens, and within the triangle there are the external iliac vessels. Direct inguinal hernia is the protrusion through the directly through the superficial inguinal ring. So This is more common in the elderly age group. So due to the laxity in the abdominal wall. Indirect hernia is more common in the young adults. So this is how femoral hernia can occur. Whenever you see a bulging in the groin, in the femoral region, it will always be medial to the femoral vessels. So this is a picture showing umbilical hernia. Umbilical hernia mostly is present since birth in most individuals. Some can develop over the years. So this is a picture showing epigastric hernia. So this is the umbilicus. This is the epigastric region. Here it is. This is the hernial sac. Most commonly, what is the content of the epigastric or umbilical hernia is the omentum. Rarely bowel can be seen, but usually most of them have omentum as its content. So this is about the brief anatomy. We'll discuss the main surgical and hernia topic now. Just a second. So going into hernia and proper, so inguinal hernia constitutes about 75 to 80% of the abdominal hernias. So obviously it is more common in males, while as incisional hernias are more common in the females because of various surgeries on the pelvis. So among the inguinal hernias, again, indirect hernias are the more common one. About 65% constitute the indirect type and are, as discussed earlier, common in the younger age group, while direct is common in the elderly age group. So risk factors which are already discussed earlier. So there are again different classifications of hernia. So depending on the extent, it is complete and incomplete. In the incomplete type, it is again called as bubinocele and funicular type. So that is dependent on the extent of hernia. Here is the diagram. So this is the internal ring. This is the external ring. So when the hernia is situated inside between these two things and inside the inguinal canal, it is called as a bubinocele. You can only elicit a small bulge while coughing. That is known as bubinocele. So what is funicular is it extends beyond the external ring and comes into the mildly above the testis. That is funicular. It is complete when uh, it goes till the testis. So here T is the testis. You can see the differences. So as we said earlier about the classifications, there are again Gilbert's classification, Nyhus classification in classification of hernias. What we discussed earlier, everything comes under anatomical classifications. So in Gilbert type 1, hernia has got a snug internal ring. What is snug internal ring is a loose internal ring through which the peritoneal sac passes out as an indirect sac. Type 2, so here it is moderately enlarged internal ring where you can admit one finger or two fingers into the enlarged internal ring. You can always reduce the hernia in type 2, but when there is an increased intra-abdominal pressure that is due to coughing or straining, the hernia reoccurs into the reoccurs. In type 3, hernia has got a large internal ring where the defect is more than 2 finger widths. Here the hernia descends into the scrotum or with a sliding hernia. The sliding hernia has the components of bladder or other structures. So that is type 3. And the type 4 is the direct hernia. Type 1, type 2 and type 3 are the indirect hernias. Type 4 is the direct hernia. It is directly the protrusion through the posterior wall. In type 5, it is direct hernia protruding out through the defect in the transversalis fascia within intact internal ring. The type 6 is pantaloons hernia. So what is pantaloons hernia is you will have both direct and indirect hernias. And type 7 is the femoral hernia. So Gilbert's classification is classified for groin hernias, not exactly for only femoral hernias. Sorry, only inguinal hernias. Femoral hernia also comes into the classification. And coming to Nyhus classification, this is more important. You should always remember the Nyhus one. So type 1 is indirect hernia with normal deep ring. In type 2 is the indirect hernia with dilated deep ring. In type 3, what is the differentiating feature is the with the posterior wall defect. In type 3, posterior wall defect will be present. That is either direct pantaloons hernia or femoral hernia. It can be A, B, C. Again, A is the direct one, B is the pantaloons hernia where there is both the direct and indirect hernias, and C is the femoral hernia. And type 4 is the recurrent hernias. Even after operating on the hernia, there is a recurrence. And European hernia, these all are not that important for you. So coming to complaints, what the patient complains is always swelling. So it can be sudden onset or gradually. More commonly, it is gradual onset, where it will be a small sized swelling in the groin, which increases by days or months. So the site of appearance is groin to scrotum. So if it is only situated in the groin, it is called as bubinocele. If it is extending into the scrotum, into the base of the scrotum, it is called as a complete hernia. The aggravating factors, these all are again repeating, straining, standing, coughing, etc. You should always remember everything comes under rise in the whichever conditions leads to rise in the intra-abdominal pressure. That may be coughing, standing, straining, coughing. So the relieving factors are lying down and manual reduction. So in bubinocele, while the patient lie down, the hernia gets reduced automatically. So again, this one is the another differentiating feature. Clinically, by seeing the patient, you can tell whether it is a direct or indirect hernia. So if the lump is reaching to the bottom of the scrotum, it may be always indirect hernia. In direct hernia, lump is small and it is gradually increased. There are more chances of automatic reduction in direct hernia. Pain is the next important clinical feature. It is always dragging and aching type of pain due to, if the omentum is the content, what happens is due to the omental pull, there is a visceral pain, which is dragging type of pain. So if the hernia gets strangulated due to the blockage of the blood vessels, tenderness is present, pain is present. While it is a dull-aching type of pain in normal conditions, the pain gets very severe in the strangulated and incarcerated hernias. So then again comes the systemic symptoms. If the hernia is an obstructed type of hernia due to the bowel obstruction, patient can develop vomitings, abdominal pain, distension, and obstipation. So I think you know about constipation, obstipation. What is the difference? Constipation is you cannot pass feces, while as obstipation is as long along with constipation, patient cannot process his gases. So other complaints are TB, asthma, chronic cough. These are the conditions which leads to chronic cough, which leads to intra-abdominal pressure again, bronchitis, pneumonias, etc. So in the past history, you should always ask for the any previous abdominal surgeries, appendectomies, etc. This is more specific to ventral hernia, that is incisional hernia. In inguinal hernias, abdominal surgeries and abdominal surgery doesn't have any role. So these are clinical aspects. It's not important right now. So the main differentiating features are between indirect and direct hernias are indirect is more common in childhood to young adults, while direct is more common in elderly. In indirect, it is always has a pre-existing sac, and the protrusion is through the deep ring, while in direct hernia is through the posterior abdominal wall defect. The shape is always pyriform or oval, while in direct hernia it is globular or round. Again, as discussed earlier, descends completely into the scrotum. So descent into the scrotum is rare in direct hernia. They can happen, but they are very rare. And again, the sac is situated anterolateral to the cord, while as in direct, it is posterior to the cord. Again, the complications are more common in indirect than compared to direct. Their obstruction and strangulation are common in indirect. Again, the various differential diagnoses are hydrocele, undescended testis, femoral hernia, lipoma of the cord. inguinal lymph nodes. These can all present as an groin swelling. So these are the main differential diagnosis. So the complications of hernia are irreducibility. Up to a certain point, you can always reduce the hernia, but whenever it becomes irreducibility, you should always get it operated as soon as possible. The other complications are obstruction, and the bowel is the content. Obstruction can happen, strangulation can happen, and in the end result is the incarceration. So what is incarceration? Is block of the lumen due to fecal matter adhesion. What happens is they can get infected and gangrene. So the common investigations of any surgery or routine blood investigations, chest X-rays, ultrasonography, etc. But hernia is always a clinical diagnosis. You don't need a investigation to diagnose a hernia. That you should always remember, because you don't need to base your diagnosis based on an ultrasonography. It is not required. So the treatment is again conservative treatment. For historical perspective, truss you should remember, they are not commonly used, rarely used these days. The main treatment of any hernia is always surgery. So truss can be used in patients who are unfit for surgery, who have very bad cardiopulmonary status, or who are unfit for anesthesia, very elderly age group. You can always manage them conservatively. So this is an example of a truss. So here, what the truss does is it presses against your abdominal wall, forcing the hernia back. It is a type of manual reduction where you don't have to use your hands. You can always use the truss. So the complications of prolonged usage of truss are again discomfort, ulceration on the skin due to pressure necrosis, inflammation, testicular atrophy, and ilioinguinal neuritis due to the compression of the ilioinguinal nerve. Inflammation of the ilioinguinal nerve can lead to neuritis. So coming to surgical management, there are different types of surgeries based on the age group. Herniotomy is done in the pediatric age group, because mostly in pediatric hernias it is due to the remnant processus vaginalis sac. So here only excision of the sac and ligation of the redundant tissue, redundant sac can be done. That is called as herniotomy. In detail, I will talk about the surgical component in the next class. So the most common surgery we do is the herniorrhaphy, which is the strengthening of the posterior abdominal wall. Hernioplasty is done more commonly, where we reconstruct the posterior wall with prosthesis, that is mesh. There are again different types of mesh, micropore, macropore, etc. So that is an entire different topic entirely. So in brief, just remember these names for now. The herniorrhaphy, it is reconstruction of the posterior abdominal wall. That is Bessinis, modified Bessinis, Schaldis repair, Desada, McCauley, and Kuntz. So whenever examiner asks you in the Viva what are the different types of surgeries, you should remember these names at least. So of this, modified Bessinis is the most commonly used surgery. most commonly done surgery in herniorrhaphy. So in the hernioplasty, it is called as Lichtenstein tension-free hernioplasty. In the laparoscopic repair is there are two laparoscopic variants present, that are TEP and TAP. So TEP is total extraperitoneal approach, while TAP is transabdominal preperitoneal approach. Unless I show you a video of how we approach the hernia, you will never understand what is the difference between TEP and TAP. So that will be in the next classes. So surgical part I will discuss with you in the next class. Video presentation. Okay, thank you.